The communist Chinese appear to be backing the pro-Hamas insurgency that is wreaking havoc on college campuses across the country. This comes by way of a new report by the Network Contagion Research Institute, which points out at astroturf moments like shut it down Palestine, described as an anti-capitalist, anti-police, anti-government protest movement. My gosh, that report points to the Singham Network. It's a global web of organizations tied to Neville Roy Singham, an American-born tech mogul based in Shanghai, who's married to Jody Evans, who's the co-founder of the left-wing anti-war group Code Pink. They're quite a couple, believe me. Joining us now to take this up is the best-selling author of Blood Money: Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills America. And now here is Peter Schweizer. And Peter, great to have you with us. I want to start with very simply, what do you make of these reports about the relationship between the CCP being linked to these pro-Hamas, anti-America demonstrations all across the country?
Yeah, there's multitudes of evidence that show that that's exactly the case, Lou. There are two organizations in particular, one called the Party for Socialism and Liberation, PSL, the other one FRSO, Freedom Road Socialist Organization. These are two pro-CCP groups. They've pledged their allegiance to China. There are ties. There's even the flow of money from some sources in China. And these two organizations are at the center of the really disruptive protests, the ones on campus, the ones where they've shut down on the streets. So there's no question that this is part of what China's trying to do to sort of sow chaos in the United States.
This is really extraordinary because there hadn't been much discussion about this, but now to see, as a result of the report, to see that this is a direct connection, that it is extensive apparently, and aimed right at the stability of the United States during an election year. That's not an accident, is it?
No, it's not. And Lou, you nailed the point exactly right. These same two organizations, FRSO and PSL, were the ones that took those George Floyd protests and radicalized them. Initially it was concerns about the, police treatments of certain communities, and then it became defund the police. Then it became all cops are racist. These two organizations were at the center of it. They were the ones that started it off with the burning of the buildings in Minneapolis, if you remember that, the so-called mostly peaceful protests. And so these are the same organizations that have suddenly morphed into these pro-Hamas entities. They both are happening during election year. They're both being held organized by these same groups, and these groups have ties and an allegiance to Beijing. That's something they declared a while ago, something that's been known, and something that has not changed. So, China's strategy is ultimately to try to disintegrate or fragment American society by pushing these sort of radical agendas, and this is one of the ways in which they're doing it.
And doing it so successfully. I think it's really important for people to also consider the idea that this is all happening, but without warning from either the FBI or any of the intelligence agencies. Should be, if anything, coming to us from the CIA, from the FBI, the National Security Division. But no, that isn't where it originates. It originates in a private organization doing great public service. Why is the FBI and our government entities in the intelligence community, why aren't they on this right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, they talk in abstract about, the threat from China, the intelligence threat from China, but I reported on this problem in my book, Blood Money. The Anti-Defamation League, which certainly I think they do a lot of things that I would disagree with, they've called out these groups for their involvement in these protests and their ties for China. And there was a recent study at Rutgers University that explored and came to the same conclusions. And yet the FBI will not issue a report or a statement or a warning explaining who's actually behind these violent protests. Are there American radicals that are involved? Of course there are. But, the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, talked about the fact that there were outside agitators, outside groups and elements, some of them foreign-based, that were sort of ginning up this conflict. And that's exactly what these organizations are doing. The Biden administration has not called them out on it. The FBI has not done something about it. And to me, it's further evidence of the fact that we have elements in Washington that are frankly compromised by the CCP. They do not want to have this conversation.
They don't want to have the conversation that apparently extends to the FBI itself, their National Security Division. It also perhaps extends, without question, in the minds of many, to the President of the United States, who looks to be compromised almost entirely when it comes to the issue of communist China, whether it be in drawing down the strategic petroleum reserves, whether part of that oil ending up in communist China. This is a sorry note to end this conversation on, but the President of the United States looks as compromised as he can be. All of his policies seem to be very meant to comfort the CCP.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, as I've reported, as you've reported on, the Biden families received some $31 million from Chinese businessmen. They've provided no discernible service or product for that money. I think we all know what's for sale there. And it comes perilously close to some of these issues. Why does he not want to talk about China's involvement in the fentanyl trade? Well, in 2017, the Biden family got a $5 million interest-free forgivable loan, which they've never repaid, from a Chinese businessman who is business partners with a Chinese criminal gang leader who set up the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico in the fentanyl trade. So there's no surprise that Joe Biden does not want to talk about China's involvement in the fentanyl trade. And even look at the recent law that passed banning TikTok, which I support, by the way. That bill passed. Everybody assumes the ban's coming. The President of the United States has to trigger that law. Joe Biden hasn't done that yet, and part of me believes that he's not going to do that because it would make his paymasters in China not very happy.
Peter Schweizer, best-selling author of the extraordinary book, Blood Money. As always, great to have you here and serving the national interest with every pronouncement. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, Peter.
Always good to be with you. Thanks, Lou.